name is Jacob, and in this video series I'll guide you through the process of creating your first URcap. In this video we will focus on how you can use the development tool, the URcap starter package, in your development process. The URcap starter package consists of a number of different components. The starter package itself is a virtual machine which is based on a 64-bit Ubuntu Linux distribution. This means that you'll most likely need a virtual machine software to execute it. The starter package contains an Eclipse IDE, or integrated development environment. This is a software that you'll use to develop your URcap code. To test your URcap, the uarsen is installed. uarsen is a fully functional simulator of the Universal Robot's graphical user interface polyscope. It closely resembles the real robot interface and is therefore a great tool to test your code along the way without having the physical robot nearby. Finally, the starter package contains the URcap SDK, or software development kit, which contains URcap samples, tutorials, and the API itself. To get started, download the latest version of the URcap starter package from the UR+ download center. Load the virtual machine into your preferred virtual machine software, such as VMware's Workstation Player or Oracle's VirtualBox. Refer to the vendor for instructions on how to configure this on your computer. Now, start the URcap starter package. Now we open the starter package, and the first thing we notice is a number of icons on the desktop. One thing is that we got the link to the Eclipse IDE, we got a folder for tutorials, and we got a README on the desktop as well. If we open the README, we got some light information about what items are contained in the starter package. We can also find that the default password is EasyBot, should you ever need that. In the top right here, you can also select your keyboard layout to fit your own localization. If we take a closer look at what's inside, we can open our file manager here, which now opens our home folder, and inside our home folder we can find this folder SDK, which currently has the SDK 1.3 installed. Opening the SDK, we can see a number of folders and files. One of them is artifacts, which is the API itself. We have doc for some documentation, tutorials, and instructions. And we have samples for a number of samples of URcaps. We also have the script new uarcap.sh that we'll get back to later. Going back to the home folder, we also have the folder uarsen. And opening uarsen, we have the UR simulators installed. Currently it's the 3.6 version for the CP3 generation of robots and the 5.0 version for the E-series version of robots. In here we also find a file named start uarsen, which we'll later use to execute our simulator. Back in the home folder we also find the workspace folder, which you can use to store your projects that you're working on for developing URcaps. Another way of navigating the starter package for any Linux environment is using the Linux terminal. The Linux terminal is started pressing Ctrl-Alt-T, which will open a terminal. Some basic commands here is ls. ls lists the contents of the current directory, and the command cd for change directory is used to open another directory. We could write cd and ur like in uarsen, and use tab to autocomplete uarsen for us. Hitting enter will now open the uarsen directory. Once again, using ls will list the contents of this directory. Currently we have uarsen 3.6 and uarsen 5.0 available here. Once again, using cd and ur will autocomplete to uarsen dash, since there is now two available options. Inserting a 5 and tab again will autocomplete to uarsen 5.0. Pressing enter and another ls will list the contents of this directory. Using cd and two dots will take me back one level, in this case back to the uarsen directory, and using simply cd and blank always takes me back to my home directory. So this is another way of navigating using the Linux terminal inside the starter package. Now we can start Eclipse by double-clicking the icon on the desktop. Now we have Eclipse open, and on our left hand side here we can see all the SDK examples are already imported. We can for instance try to open the Hello World Swing example, which contains the source main Java folder where there is just one package. If we open the package, we can see all the different Java classes that are contained in this URcap. We can also open the maven dependencies, where we can see the dependency to the 1.3 API. Opening the API level here actually lists all the different packages and respectively Java interfaces that are contained inside the API. So you can use this to browse the API. Trying to open one of the Java classes in the URcap, for instance the Hello World installation node service, will show us the contents of this class. In this case, it contains 4 different overridden methods that are implemented by this Hello World installation node service. All these samples you can use for inspiration and guidelines when creating your own URcap projects. Now let's try and start a uarsen simulator. To start the uarsen, open a new terminal pressing Ctrl-Alt-T and use CD to change directory to the desired uarsen folder. Start by writing CD and find the overall uarsen folder. You can optionally list which ones are available here. And using CD again to open, for instance, uarsen 5.0 takes us into the uarsen 5.0 directory. In here we have the file called start uarsen, and this is what we want to execute to start executing our uarsen simulator. To execute this file, use // and then start uarsen.sh. Hitting enter will start booting up our simulator. In the terminal here, you can as well see that Polyscope is writing all the system out print lines, in this case starting bundles, and you can also use this in the debugging phase of your own URcap. Now we have the uarsen open and can navigate the Polyscope user interface. For instance, opening programs and starting to insert various commands. We can also look into our installation domain at the various sections that are available here. In general, uarsen looks exactly like the physical user interface on the robot and is hence very good for working with your URcap and testing it out throughout your development phase. If you ever want to terminate the uarsen, you can always go back to the terminal and press Ctrl-C, which will terminate your uarsen for you. If we want to start a CB3 uarsen instead, the procedure is pretty much the same. First, we need to navigate to the appropriate uarsen folder. In this case, it's uarsen 3.6, and then we use // and start uarsen.sh to start executing our simulator. This will instead now start booting up a uarsen software version 3. Now we have the uarsen 3.6 open and can as well navigate this user interface, for instance going into Program Robot, create an empty program, and navigating the Structure tab with the various program nodes, or going into the Installation tab to see the various nodes that are present there. This concludes the introduction to the URcap starter package. In the next video, we will use the starter package to create our first URcap project.